Hello everyone, we are at the Berachot Mem Aleph 41 in Berachot. The discussion here first is about Kdima Berachot. Imagine a situation that your lovely spouse put on the table different fruits, and now you want to make the proper bracha. We explained many times that part of appreciation, we are blessed with different fruits and different vegetables, is to thanking God for and to say it properly. We are obligated to say a bracha, to say a blessing before we eat anything. Now the problem is, imagine you have, for example, a fig, and you have an apple, and you have a orange, and you want to make a bracha, and you need to know which one is the proper one and why. It's very important because the priority in Berachot apply mainly to the Shivat HaMinim, which means the Torah tells us that there are 7 species that Eretz Yisrael were blessed, which is chita, seora, barley, wheat, barley, geffen, it's a vine, te'ena, it's fig, rimon, it's a pomegranate, zeit shemen, it's like olive, and dvash is like a date. So this is the 7 species the Torah tells us that Eretz Yisrael were blessed. So the Mishnah said, "Hayu lefanav minim harbe." If there were many species, so Rav Yehuda says, if there is among them one of the 7 species, so he should say the blessing on that. But Chachamim said no, recite the blessing whichever he prefers. So the Amarula. Now we have a discussion over that. Machloket b'shebirchotehem shavot. We all agree when the brachot are equal, which means that they're about the same. The question is only over if there are 2 species to recite the blessing more. The Rabbi Dr. min shiva adiv, Rabbi Dr. min chaviv adiv. So the machloket is Rabbi Dr. hold that the species which is one of the 7 species that Eretz Yisrael blessed take precedence, and then you have to make the blessing. For example, if you have olive and then you have an apple. So since the olive is one of the 7 species, so you recite the olive ha'etz and eat some of the olive, and then you eat the apple without another blessing. Okay? The Rabbanan and the sages hold that the species favored by him take precedence. So let's say if he likes apple more than olive, he should make the blessing over that. Aval b'shen birchotem shavot. But where the blessings are not the same, which means that only one blessing called after b'diavad be valid after the fact as a good as a part of the food as well. So now the big question is, you should recite ha'etz on the apple, eat some of it, and then eat the olive without another blessing or not. So Rashi here explained to us, and he said, for example, if one wish to eat relish, he said, "En bracha achat potartan v'shuv en kan machloket." So Rashi said that the issue is that the blessings are not the same because one it's a hadama and one is the ha'etz. So because it's not equal, the question is, what do you do? Which one you go? The Tosefta also elaborate on that. We running out of time today to go the whole details, so I highly recommend to go over the Tosefta in the future. But I'll just give you the bottom line in halachot. First, let's read here the Gemarah. The Gemarah said, "Divrei hakol mevarech al zeh v'chozer mevarech al zeh." According to everyone, he should make 2 blessings. So he make a blessing, this one and then the other. So the halacha is as follows: that there is a one halacha by the Rosh that he holds the same as Rabbi Yehuda, which means that if you have a choice between Shivat HaMinim, the 7 species, and a regular one, you should always go by the 7 species. So therefore, when the Gemarah said here, perot shebirchotem shavot, if you have a fruits that they equal in the blessing, so he should make the priority something that is one of the 7 species. But if not, then he will make the blessing according to someone that he likes best. So in other words, if you have different fruits and you're planning to eat all of them, but you like one the most, like you go to those stores, they sell you slices fruits, and you like more than the others, but you take as a collection. So if none of them is part of the Shivat HaMinim, you should take the one you like best first, and that's basically the halacha that Taz hold. Now, if it's not equal blessings, so then or it's all of them, it's the 7 species. For example, if you have date, figs, olive, and that's the all 7 blessings. Therefore, the Magen Avraham said that you should take someone that you like best first, and that's the meaning of making a chavivut. That's something that you prioritize. However, the Rambam hold a different view, and he hold according to the Chachamim, the sages, and he said that it's always go by the someone that you like best. So therefore, if you have equal best, which means you like both of them, Rambam hold that in that case you should make the Shivat Aminim, the one of the 7 species, the first one. But the halacha is not clear, and therefore there are those who go by the Mishnah Berurah, which is if it's the 7 species take precedence, and there are the Shulchan Aruch Harav hold the same as the Taz, that a person have the choice to choose whatever he chooses. And the Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim in 211 elaborate on that and said that they basically go the same way as the Rambam said, that you can pick and choose. But again, as you see, it's broader in a sense of if you go either by the Shivat Aminim, that take priority anyway, or you take by the something that you like best. Anyway, if you wrap it up, the proper way that I humbly think is this: if you have a choice and you see something that is a Shivat Aminim, try to make your business to make the bracha over that. But if you tell me strongly that the Shivat Aminim, for example, you have olive and you're really not crazy about it, and you really love whatever it is, something else that you have in that fruits, then you can go by the Rambam. Anyway, Meitivei. היו לפניו צנון וזית. מברך על הצנון ופותר את הזית. If you have a relish and an olive, so you make the bracha over the relish, and therefore you don't need to make a bracha over the olive. So he said that's contradicted what we said earlier. What we said earlier is that the olive is part of the 7 species. If it's a part of the 7 species, so that should take precedence. The Gemarah said, and here, in this case, we're dealing with what? Shatznonikar, where the relish is the primary food, which means the olive is a subordinate, because it's like you just eat it because you want to make the relish sharp, so you eat it in such a way. So this is the reason why the blessing of the radish covered the olive, because the olive is not subordinate to the radish. So therefore, what do you understand? That each of them, you need to make a separate blessing to each and every one of them. If you go in this way, so now we have to clarify things. So Rabbi Yehuda hold that always we have to go by what? But something that is from the 7 species. That's the Rabbi Yehuda opinion. So if you go by that way, lately the Rabbi Yehuda Adetnan, does Rabbi Yehuda not hold what we learned early in the Mishnah? If you have 2 foods, someone is the primary food and someone is the secondary, and you have a choice between the 2, so what do? You do always by the primary food. It's something that you eat permanent. That's the essence of the food, not the sub dish, like something that you put as a as a sauce or something like that. So here they said, so if you tell me that way, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, if you tell me that the radish the olive came to be served, so he need to make the blessing over the radish, and thereby what happens is he discharges his blessing obligation of the olive as well. So what we see here, that Rabbi Yehuda does subscribe to this rule. So now you can say that the dispute between the first one, the Braita, and the Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda is pretend to a case which the olive is basically subordinate to the radish. So it's contradictory. So the Gemarah answered and they said, no. Le'olam bitznoni karka sinan. In truth, what we said earlier, it's dealing with a radish that is primary food, as we answered earlier. The dispute between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbanan, it's a different subject. That here we have a missing word. You have to understand in general, when they have the Ravina and Rav Ashi that they brought different Berachot, the conclusion of the Talmud at the early 5th century, it was 2 giant rabbis by the name of Ravina and Rav Ashi before the computer era, that they put all the quotation which called Berachot from different locations. So sometimes it was a missing words. Sometimes it was a missing quotations. They need to put it together. Remember that it was much earlier than the time of written text or copy text. So he said, "V'chasur mechasrai." The writer is missing word, and this is how it should read. Hayu lefanav. Hayu lefanav. By the way, this phrase "chasura mechasra v'acheknarnei," it's something that you see it many times in the Talmud when it's come to quotation of different Berachot, different quotations. Hayu lefanav tznon v'zayit. If there were before him radish and an olive, mevarech al tznon. Upoter et hazayit. He should make the blessing over the radish, and he exempt the olive. B'med dvarim urim. What we talking, with circumstances we're speaking? Kshatznon ikar. If the radish is the core, the primary food of the meal. Avali and atznon ikar. But if the radish is not primary food, and the olive is being eaten for its own sake, rather than to nullify the sharpness of the radish, so therefore everyone agree that what? Mevarech al zeh v'chozer mevarech al zeh. He should make the blessing over one and recite the blessing of the other one. U'shnei minin be'alma shebirchotem shavot. But when you have two species in general whose blessing are the same, which means like the olive and the apples, mevarech al ezeh meshin yirtzeh. You can make a blessing whichever you choose. Rabbi Dr. Omer, no. Rabbi Dr. disagree with that statement, and he said what? Mevarech al hazayit shel zayit min shiva. No. I always go, Rabbi Dr. said, by the way the Torah described. The Torah described the 7 species as the primary cause of the Holy Land, and the key point of the blessing of the Holy Land is the Shivat Aminim, the 7 species. So if you have any food that relate to something that is a blessing on Eretz Yisrael, you should make your business to make it as a priority point. Pliga bar Rabbi Yami v'Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha. This is a basic subsequent controversy between two Amoraic rabbis. What? Chad amar machlok shebirchotem shavot. One hold that the real disagreement between the two is when the blessing of both species are the same. What's the problem? Rabbi Yehuda savar the min shiva adif, v'Ravan sabri chaviv adif. We said it earlier. Rabbi Yehuda hold that what? You have to go always by shivat aminim. The sages hold that you go by what you like best. Correct? So, aval b'shem birchotem shavim, but if it's not equal, divrei hakol, everybody agree, mevarech al zeh v'chozer mevarech al zeh, that you have to make 2 separate blessings. B'chad amar af b'shem birchotov shamot name machloket. And the other one said that even it's not an equal blessing, it's still, it's not the same. It's still a, soon we explain what it's all about. Bishlam aleman damar birchotem shavot machloket shapir. All is well according to the one who said that the dispute pertain only to where the blessing are the same, which means that so now we fully understand, because it's one of the 7. If it's one of the 7, now we understand it. But if it's a different brachot, so now you have a big controversy. What's the disagreement? We should do first. We should eat first. It's not just the blessing, but the big question is that when you have prioritized in such a way, you should, it's one opinion, you should put the fruits that Eretz Yisrael were blessed first. Why? The Amar Rav Yosef v'yitem Rabbi Yitzchak. Rabbi Yosef said in the name of Rabbi Yitzchak, Kol המוקדם בפסוק זה מוקדם לברכה. Beautiful. שנאמר, ארץ חיטה ושורה וגפן ותנה ורימון, ארץ זית שמן ודבש. He said, even within the sentence in the Torah, since the Torah gives us the 7 species, if you have, for example, 2 of the 7 species on a table, which one you go first? You have to go first by whom? By the order the Torah puts. So for example, if you have an olive and a date, which one you take first? Since the Torah said, Zeit shemen udvash, so since the olive preceding in the Torah, in the line before the date, you should go by the olive first. Upliga de Rabbi Hanan. Okay? This is teaching of Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Yitzchak is disagreement with the teacher of Rabbi Hanan. Amar Rabbi Hanan, Kol ha-pasuk kulo l'shiurim ne'emar. He holds that the entire verse is the purpose of teaching that each of the 7 fruits unit of measure is the same law. What does that mean? He said, Chita, when the Torah said the word wheat, ditnan. הנכנס לבית המנוגה, וכליו על כתפיו, וסנדליו וטבעותיו בידיו, הוא והן טמאים מיד. Someone entered, this is a different, it looks like we're digressing, but soon you see how we come back to that. So it said someone who entered with the garment to a house that it's contaminated, right? And he carry in his shoulder, in his shoes, his ring, and all he's carrying things that he went. So right away he became impure. So it's like, for example, if there's a house that they have a dead person and a Kohen enter in, so he become impure, okay? היה לבוש כליו, if he's wearing his garments, וסנדליו ברגליו וטבעותיו ואצבעותיו, if his shoes were on his feet and his ring were on his finger, הוא טמא מיד, he became impure right away. והן טהורים, however those parts it's pure, why? עד שישהה בכדי אכילת פרס, until, meaning his garments, his shoes, his rings, remain pure until he lingered the amount of time that it takes to eat a half loaf, which means that it's not right away, it's not like his body that became pure. That again is talk about the law of purity here. But soon you see how we derive from that. Pat chitin velo pat sorim. That applied to wheat bread rather than the barley bread. Meisev ochlan beloftan, eaten while he is reclining and eating the bread together with the relish. So the word wheat in this verse indicate what? That is a wheat bread we have here, right? For that time, right? So when you have this implication of some type of leprosy, like tzarat, so right? So the more than the whole idea is that chita is considering it's a wheat bread. So he said sora, the second on the barley. That now that we learn etzem kisora, if you have a human bone that you have with a barley size, that it's like small salt, so metame b'maga masad, it means it touched it, became impure. Ve'no metame be'ola. However, if it's went to the tent that they have a roof, it's not becoming contaminated. So what do you see from that? If we touch the carpet itself, so that's different. So it became a impure. But you have here exclusion of a bone that they have the size of barley, that it's not contained a truma. So you see here a different category that's a small size. Geffen, also vines. So one is the vines became a issue of Nazirite, which means someone who will commit himself not to touch any type of something that make him drunk, such as wine. So what's the minimum measure, or what is the measure that we start considering him as a violation? So he said, Kedei revi'it yain lenazir. When you use the amount of revi'it wine is basically if you take the nazir, like a person who take upon himself the vow of prohibition from drinking, etc. So if you have the measure of like 6 eggs, that's basically about revi'it. So then he's in violation. But in other words, if he take a sip, it's not in the violation, according to that. Te'ena, fig, when we mention ki grogeret lo tzad Shabbat, when we talk about carrying without eruv on Shabbat, so we talk about grogeret, which means a small amount, minimum amount. It's like carrying from one domain to another on Shabbat, a small amount. Rimon, what is the pomegranate? So he said, כי דתנן כל היו בעלי בתים שיעורן כרימונים. So because those utensils are small, so he said the measure which they have impurity is a measure of pomegranates. So again, you see here they talking about size. Eretz Zeit Shemen, the sixth one of the 7 list, he said this is the olive oil. אמר רבי יוסי ברבי חנינא, ארץ שכל שיעוריה כזיתים. So that's teach us that when we speak about the land of Israel, it's every legal measure of the size of oil, which means that this is the small side of oil. I must tell you, when I was in service, we went to the Druze village, Mrar, in the Galileite, and we have some friends that from that Druze. So they used to show us olives in many different sizes. They have olives in a size here like an egg size. Then they have olives that they squeeze in such a level and take out the pit that in the size of like very infinitesimal, it's a small, tiny. So you see here, we comprehend better the whole concept of kezait. When you talk, for example, in Seuda, that in order to consider something as a meal, to do a motzi, you need to eat the kezait, you need to eat that measure. So he said, the last one is, Kol shiurei asal kada'atach. So all this, could you really think that this is all together? We have all this measure earlier, that most of the size is like the olive, and vash is the last one ככותבת הדסה ביום הכיפורים. We learn soon we have the Yom Kippur, someone is fasting, and unfortunately he reached a point that he's like bolmus, or is in a state of tremendous need for food. So what do you do with him? So basically halacha can take a sip of water and continue on, if he can. Or another sip, woman pregnant, and things like that, ill person. Now, if it's food, so the definition is ככותבת התמרה, a size of large date. That's the minimum amount of food that you consider quote-unquote liable of eating on Yom Kippur, like you're violating Yom Kippur. Which means if you put in the mouth of that person that he's suddenly not feeling, we're not talking about sick person, the doctor not allowed to fast, that's a different story. Talk about a regular healthy person that suddenly have crash on his system and you need to feed him with something. He's not fainted, but he has a tremendous need. So as long as he's below then כותבת התמרה, as long as he's below then the large size of date, it's fine. The minute exceeded that, then is the issue of violation of Yom Kippur. So you learn all these measurements. So basically eating even a lesser amount of date is prohibited. But in a sense, if we talk about penalty or violation of Torah law, so it's important to know, the Gemarah said it in Yoma, that a person need to bring an offering, it's called chatat offering, a sin offering, after Yom Kippur for violating law. That apply only if he eat at least the minimal amount of date. Okay, ve'idach. But on the other hand, haneshiurin behedya miktive, this measure explicitly written in the verse, ela mirabanan ka asmachta be'alma. There is a concept that what is written in the Torah and you have it word by word in the Torah, or is a rabbinic decree and you learn it by asmachta, which means you have an indirect scripture that supported the opinion that the rabbis established. Example, Rav Chizda and Rav Nuna Yatev Besudata, so two great rabbis, Rav Chizda and Rav Nuna, they sit around the table for a meal. So they were served with what? With date and pomegranates. So what happened? Shakal Rav Nuna brecha tamre bereisha. So he make the blessing over the date first. Now, what's the problem? No, help me, what's the problem?
Pomegranate comes first in the Torah.
Excellent. The pomegranate comes first in the Torah. Thank you. אמר לרב חיסדא לא סבר למר לעד אמר רב יוסף ויתמר רבי יצחק כל המוקדם בפסוק זה קודם לברכה. Don't you follow the teaching we just said earlier that whatever mentioned in the Torah first, it should be first in making the blessing, the bracha, right? So why are you doing it? אמר לי זה שני לארץ וזה חמישי לארץ, which means the date is the second after the land and the pomegranate is the fifth after the land. What does that mean? When you have the word eretz, land, mentioned twice in the verse, you said eretz, chita, seora, gefen, teena, verimon, eretz, zeit, shemen, udvach. So the pasuk mentioned the word land, the word eretz, twice. Now if you count the words in that verse, so you go eretz, land, wheat, barley, wine, figs, and pomegranate. So pomegranate is the fifth word after the word land in the first part of that verse. Now if you go the second part, when you mention the word land verse, so you see the olive and the honey and the date is the second to the word land. So what you learn from that, therefore, these take precedence over pomegranate. Amar lei, he answered to him, Man yahiv lach nagre defar zela u'neshama. So what he said, it's like a phrase, he said, tireless feet of steel that we could then follow and attend you constantly, which means he is like, what he tried to tell him? No, what do you understand? No? So he's like expresses wishes. He said, I wish to, it's like he said that I wish to have a legs made out of iron. It's like he's saying that, the way that you brought it up is like in such a way, and here we derive the whole idea of the, when it's come to fruits that you eat during the meal, it's an issue. Now, what's the issue here? I want to give a word of intro. You have a meal, regular meal. Let's say if you make a motzi and you sit for a meal. Surprisingly, suddenly they serve you with something that is unanticipated. And on the top of that, if it's something like fig, that is one of the Shivat Aminim. So what do? You have to make a separate bracha because it's not something that you pretend, that you know in advance it's going to be part of the meal. But what happened, how you go the brachot. So if you brought for someone figs and the grape during the meal, because you have blessing after meal, after the Suda, the blessing after meal, the long Birkat Hamazon cover everything, so you don't need to make a blessing afterward. But since it's a surprise, you didn't anticipate, so when you're washing hand for a motzi, you're planning to wash hand for full meal, you didn't anticipate that part, so since it's a surprise, you have to make a blessing separate for that. וכן אמר רב נחמן, the same Rav Nachman hold, טעונים ברכה לפני ונטעונים ברכה אחריהם, you have to make a bracha before, not after. ורב ששת אמר, טעונים ברכה בין לפניהם ולאחריהם, you have to make both blessing before and blessing after, שאין לך דבר שטעון ברכה לפניו ונתדעו ברכה לאחריו. He says, it can be that something that doesn't have a both blessing before and after, אלא פת הבאה בכיסנים בלבד. Only bread that comes from kisanim alone. Kisanim, it's a bread that it's like the foundation. It's like the bread that toasted grain. So after finishing the meal, and in those days, and after reciting Birkat Hamazon, it was customary to eat toasted grain as the healthful effect of the heart. That's what they used to do. So if it happened they turn around it's doing the meal, so then it's a question. Now, at the end of this shiur, in a few minutes, I'll give you the whole final word of halacha, because so far we are just in a statement of discussion. ופליגי דרבי חייא, דאמר רבי חייא, פת פותרת כל מיני מאכל ויין פותר כל מיני משקים. רבי חייא hold, the minute you wash your hand for a motzi and you plan to have a meal, that's included everything. Which means everything that come in, it's already included. So, for example, he hold further that if you have a wine, so the wine discharges the blessing obligation for all type of beverages. The minute you said of wine is they have the special importance. You do kiddush, you do avdallah, you do wedding. Over the wine, there is ability to make you drunk. It's a much serious drink than all the other drinks. So the beverage, one drink between the wine prior to the after blessings, so it's included also as part of that. Therefore, is not recited separate prior or after blessing to that beverages. Amar Rav Papa hilcheta. Rav Papa hold that the final halacha is דברים הבאים מחמת הסעודה בתוך הסעודה אין טעונים ברכה. So some type of food that come as a result of the meal, doing the meal, so you don't need a bracha לא לפניהם ולא לאחריהם. You don't need to make a blessing neither before nor after. ושלא מחמת הסעודה בתוך הסעודה, if it's a surprise, there's a food that it's not as a result of a meal, but come doing the meal, טעונים ברכה לפניהם ונותר ברכה אחריהם. The whole concept is you have more than 50 million people that you know, the dream in life is to have a cup of coffee. And you have so many million people that they starve, right? And if you read the papers properly, you see the statistic over the world became poorer and poorer. So you have a situation that some hold that if you have $15 in your pocket, you are among the 10% of the richest people in the world. So if you think about it, we have to be very thankful to what we have. So therefore, the big discussion is how far I have to go with my thankfulness to Hashem. Should I go for every small thing that I get or not? That's just the background of that. So he hold טעונים ברכה לפניהם ונתוני ברכה לאחריהם, לאחר הסעודה טעונים ברכה בין לפניהם ולאחריהם. So if you ate it after the meal, you have to make a separate blessing before and after. But if it's come toward the meal, so since you cover it with hamotzi, you don't need to make a separate. Shalut ben Zoma, if you remember, it's the beginning of chapter 4 of Ethics. And Bezoma, one of the rabbis that never married because he, quote unquote, married the Torah. It's a long discussion over Ben Zoma, but he was one of the 4 rabbis that entered the Pardes, the secret, and didn't come back, etc. But anyway, he was one of the greatest speaker and greatest scholars. So here, hold, what's the reason we say that if you serve with some food during the meal, and it's not, it's like meal during the meal, which means if you go to a special private home, you don't have this menu. You go to a restaurant, they give you a menu and tell you exactly what you're going to eat, right? So very rarely you have surprises. But if you go to a private home, and they serve you, they don't give you a list of what's going to be served, they serve. So if something happened, so he said you don't need to make a blessing neither before nor after. אמר להם, הואילו פת פוטרתן, since you make המוציא for the bread at the very beginning, so then it's a discharge, the blessing obligation of others. So now they ask a very serious question. It says, if you tell me that wine included everything, since wine has so many abilities, we said that wine can do kiddush, avdala, birkat chatanim for the weddings, can make a person drunk, etc. So if you tell me that the recite of bread also discharge the blessing obligation of the wine, so why you don't say that wine can make the same thing for everything? You can make a bracha over the wine, and that's collect everything. So he said, no. Shana wine, he said that wine is different. Why? The gorem bracha leatzmo, because for bring about the blessing for the itself, it's different. So Rashi explained and he said, בכמה מקומות הוא בא ומברכים עליו ואף על פי שלא היו צריכים לשתייתו. So Rashi hold here that if sometimes during the meal they serve you with wine, so it traces a scenario that different wine, different style, and different taste, different things. There are those who hold that you have to make a bracha separately. We don't hold that in the final word, soon you see how, but there is a school of thought that hold in that way. So in the final point in the shiur, I want to share with you some halachot in a practical. You always like to hear what's the final word, not just a study, which is beautiful. First one I would like to share with you is from Shulchan Aruch, the code Orach Chaim 2:11. He said, "Hayu lefanav nimarbe." If it's a situation that there are many type of food before him, so there are two opinions about what is the real halacha in that case. According to Rosh, the halacha is that the way we said it in Rabbi Yehuda, that with regard to fruit which require the same blessing, so you should make the one of the 7 species as priority, and you make the blessing over that. This is one school of thought. But however, as we said, there is another opinion of the Rambam. The halacha is that you go by the one you like first. Second halacha we learn today is the halacha of kol hamukdam befasuk mukdam lebracha, which means this is the Rambam who said in the Hilchot Berachot chapter 8, and he said each food that preceded the others in the verse take precedence in the term of blessing, which means according to all opinions where there is no preferences for one of the food items in terms of the significance of the blessing, nor in terms of the fact that he likes one better, so you have to recite over the blessing over the food item enumerated earlier in the verse first. So that's when you have no priority. Another one, it's the idea of when it's come to measurement. So we said, ככותבת הדגסה ביום הכיפורים, this important halacha, Shulchan Aruch 6:12, he said, an equivalent of large date on Yom Kippur, the quantity of food for which one is liable on Yom Kippur is amount of size of a large date bark, which is slightly smaller than egg bark. So we explained many times that each case it's different and the person needs to ask in particular a situation, but in general, if you're not here and you don't know what to do, etc., etc., so in general it's a drop of water, small drop, and continue on. If it's possible, then continue another one, and then go on with the fast. Only if it's really serious situation, then it's different story. But many times when you give a person a small drop of water, he or she can carry on and continue on with the excuse me, or with the food. But as we said many times, on the other way around, when the doctors forbid someone to fast, then we take it as a prohibition. But again, you should ask in particular. Now it's important halacha with dvarim abayim mechamat suuda, which means food items that come due to the meal. So here we have the Rambam. He said in Hilchot Brachot chapter 4, and he said, foods which are eaten as integral parts of the meal. For example, you have cooked dishes, right? So you require no blessing at all. Fruit of the like, which is supplementary to the meal, require blessing before eating them. So if one decided to conclude his meal, to eat the food, reciting grace after the meal, he must recite the blessing both before and after the food, in the way that Rav Papa said. So now let's understand it, because this is something that you should be aware. If you have an amotzin, you have a regular meal, and they serve you with applesauce, what do you do? So the answer is, to be clear and to be safe, you should take a regular apple, you should make bore priates, and you included the source. Because the source itself, it's a controversy, what you should do. If it's a part of the
pieces of apple in it, then you're okay.
If it's a piece of apple or not. Now, another thing is, when we said at the very end of the Gemarah that it was a question about the wine. And we said, if one recites blessing over wine during the meal, so we said that wine is different. Why is different? Because we said that wine, it gorem bracha le'atzmo, it causes a blessing for itself. So wine, even the Halacha Shulchan Aruch said in 174 that even one drinks, it's during the meal, he requires a separate blessing. Why? Because it is so significant that one recited blessing over it together with other blessing like Kiddush and Havdalah, but even though he does not particularly want to drink it. So during the meal too, a blessing recited over the wine, not exempted by the blessing over the bread. So it means if you have, for example, a white wine during the meal, you make over the Raid, Shiraz, Kiddush, right? You go to the store at the corner, right, of Defense Highway, and you buy wine for the Yontif. Now you have several different wines. So you take wine, red wine for the Kiddush, and then during the meal you serve with white wine. So according to the way that Shulchan Aruch here brought, you have to make a bracha over that, right? But we'll discuss further about, in regard to this tomorrow.